All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible stories in all of history. We're talking about how a single company from a relatively small island ended up ruling the entire Indian subcontinent. And here's the thing. It wasn't some grand master plan from the start. Nope. It was an empire built piece by piece on a few powerful lessons they learned right there in the thick of it. So that's the big question, right? How on earth does a group of merchants whose main goal is profit suddenly become conquerors and rulers? Well, the answer isn't just about guns and battles. It's about something much smarter. It's about learning to see the cracks in the system and understanding the political and military game being played in 18th century India, and then learning how to win it. First off, we've got to get one thing straight. The India of the 18th century was not the single unified country we see on a map today. Not even close. It was this vibrant, chaotic, and totally fascinating patchwork of kingdoms, princes, and warlords all competing with each other. And this fragmentation, this constant rivalry, well, that wasn't just the setting. It was the chessboard itself. And that brings us to the first and probably the most famous lesson the English learned: how to master this real-life Game of Thrones and turn it to their advantage. The critical weakness they figured out was the lack of what we'd call nationalism. You see, people's loyalty wasn't to some big idea of India. It was local. It was to their king, their prince, their immediate homeland. This meant there was no united front, and that created all sorts of opportunities for a clever outsider to slip in. And here's exactly how they played that game. Let's say one Indian ruler wanted to get one over on his neighbor. The English would swoop in and say, "Hey, we'll help you out with our amazing army, for a price, of course." Or maybe a prince was worried about a rival trying to steal his throne. The English would back him up, and in return, they'd get some land or maybe some exclusive treating rights. They became the ultimate kingmakers, always picking a side and making sure they came out on top, no matter who actually won the local squabble. But, offering military help is kind of pointless if your army isn't any good. And that leads us straight to the second major lesson: the absolutely overwhelming power of a modern European-style military. Honestly, the difference was like night and day. On one side, you had these huge, incredibly brave Indian armies, but they were often a bit chaotic, organized under a feudal system. And on the other side, you had these perfectly disciplined lines of soldiers, firing their muskets all at once, backed by powerful cannons that could just rip through an enemy formation. It was basically a modern, industrial-age fighting machine going up against a medieval one. So this became their magic recipe. You didn't actually need a giant army. All you needed was a relatively small, well-drilled force with modern cannons, and you could absolutely demolish armies that were 10 times bigger. This wasn't just a military advantage, it was a psychological one. It made them seem invincible. Okay, but here's the catch. Shipping thousands of European soldiers all the way to India was insanely expensive and a logistical nightmare. And this is where the third and maybe the most important lesson of all comes into play. This was the real aha moment that changed everything. This was it. This was the light bulb moment that unlocked the whole empire. The English realized that being a great soldier wasn't some kind of European superpower. They saw that an Indian soldier, if you gave him the same training, the same rifle, and the same discipline, was every bit as brave and effective as a soldier from Britain. Which naturally brings up a really important question. Why would they do it? Why would an Indian soldier sign up to fight for a foreign company, sometimes even against other Indian kingdoms? And the answer brings us right back to that first point about nationalism. For many people, being a soldier was a job, a profession. And who was the best employer around? The English. They offered something that many local rulers just couldn't: a good, steady paycheck. You got paid on time, every time. It was a career, and they were the most reliable employer on the market. So, this brilliant insight was immediately turned into a brutally effective system. It was like an assembly line for building an army. Step 1, recruit soldiers from the local population. Step 2, offer them good, consistent pay. Step 3, train them in the European style and give them modern weapons. And step 4, use this new, highly effective and affordable army to expand your power. It was a perfect, self-fueling cycle of conquest. So when you put all three of these lessons together, you start to see something incredible take shape. It stops being a series of random victories and starts looking like a clear, repeatable blueprint for building an empire. It was this three-part machine, really. First, you have the political strategy. Play the local powers against each other. Then, you have the military hardware. Use your superior army to guarantee a win. And finally, you have the manpower solution. Hire local soldiers to make your army cheap, scalable, and huge. Each part of the machine fed the others, creating this unstoppable engine of expansion. And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. Was the British Empire in India some grand, evil master plan designed from the start in London? Or was it something more chaotic, a series of lucky breaks and clever lessons learned by ambitious people on the ground that accidentally snowballed into one of the biggest empires the world has ever seen? The truth, as it so often is in history, is probably somewhere in the middle.